New Orleans, the Crescent City, seethes and simmers with music. Music is alive here. It pours from every nook, cranny, and courtyard. And in 1994, Congress established an intangible national park in the city of New Orleans to preserve and promote jazz as an American cultural treasure.
You're in New Orleans, and this is the birthplace of jazz, and jazz is alive. It's not a cannonball.
Well, if we talk about the birth of New Orleans music, we really have to talk about the birth of American music, which would be jazz. So when we say this indigenous music, we're talking about the nucleus, the start point. The start point is jazz. 350 years of things have gone into it.
Spanish, African, French, Creole from the Caribbean, as well as German.
Latinos, Jews, Sicilians.
Blends between blacks and French and Spanish people, often known as Creoles of color.
And of course, when this city was really conceived, there were thousands of American Indians already living here roughly in the present day spot.
In centuries past, beyond the former ramparts that protected the city, the throbbing beat of bare hands on drum skins and chanting voices carried a message of resistance and reaffirmation of a suppressed heritage.
New Orleans, more than any place in the country, allowed for the survival of African musical traditions. And how did that happen? The most significant reason is a place called Congo Square.
Congo Square is sacred ground. This was the place as early as the 1700s where Africans gathered on Sundays to practice their culture. People came here from Senegal, the Congo, Dahomey, all over Western and Central Africa. So this was the one place in the antebellum South where Africans were allowed to dance, drum, speak their languages, and practice their culture.
African drumming and dance in the antebellum South was thought to be connected to a potential for slave rebellion, which was everybody's greatest fear. And so consequently, such practices were absolutely illegal throughout the South.
Except in New Orleans.
New Orleans was exceptional because instead of trying to eradicate those practices, they said, this is inevitable given our population, but we're going to try to regulate it.
So the rhythms of Africa, which are heavily syncopated, were allowed to breathe a little bit here in New Orleans and allowed to survive.
Jazz is a music that comes from the underclass. It's a vernacular approach to making music, but it also pulls on Eurocentric classical and art music traditions, which were present in New Orleans very early on.
A lot of people don't really understand that it was born out of death.
Funerals for New Orleans black residents are often arranged by local burial societies or social aid and pleasure clubs, a tradition that goes back more than 200 years.
And they would put money together in these clubs so they could afford to bury people. At these services, you would get a preacher, you get a church, you get the casket, and they would bring it to the graveyard. But you'd also get this band. And when those church doors open, and you hear that band start that first song, there's no more powerful moment. You know time has stopped. The person you loved is no more, and they're gone. That casket starts rolling out, and they start playing those first notes, and it starts off with this roll brrr, on a snare drum, and then a bass drum hits this call. Boom, 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 boom. That's exactly what they do, and it's gut-wrenching.
After the burial, the band leads the mourners away from the cemetery.
People who really were very close to the deceased person, they stay behind, and they're considered the first line. Then there's this other really crazy aspect that happens.
A second line forms.
You might start off with 30 people who were at the funeral, maybe it was 60 people at the funeral. But it'd be double that by the time you get 4 blocks. By the time you get 8 blocks, it'd be double that. And half those people have no idea who died. That's the most important aspect of the second line. See, everybody gets a chance to be a part of it. Everybody gets a chance to heal.